Okay, so not a whole lot has been happening in the last week, to be frank. Um, I did not see really anything new or closed. We do have a number of PRs, though, that are in the no movement category, and one of them is one that Laura had wanted to talk about. Um, is Igor here? No, Igor's not here. Um, this was one of his pinning PRs, a newer one they'd worked on, but without either Laura or Igor, I guess we won't talk about it. Otherwise, let's see. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot in here to talk about today. So, yeah, this might be a short meeting. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that there's a lot of work going on right now looking at the SnapMapper and also RBD mirror performance. And Gabby, you had that excellent document that you shared out, the email you shared out. Um, is there any way that we can share that with the greater group? Because I think that was really useful.
Yeah, you. One of my statement was incorrect when I said that the SnapMapper is a global object, while in fact it's a per PG object.
Oh, it is. Well, no, I don't think you
Yeah.
were totally wrong though, because that was always explained to me as one of the reasons that we couldn't do per PG sharding in Blue Store.
Um, it is a per PG, but it is extremely awkward design. I'm still not sure why it was built like this. I spent the last few days trying to understand the layout, but it is extremely expensive way of doing things. So if you do search, it's really expensive. I thought that there is a map from SnapID to a list of objects, but in fact, what we do is, my understanding is that we have tuples of SnapID object ID, SnapID object ID. So if you want to know to find all the objects affected by SnapID, you have to cut the subtree with all the objects starting with the same SnapID and some other things. But it's just going to be I think it's a red black tree and a lot of objects which are which are just SnapID object ID, SnapID object ID. So it seems to be an expensive way to iterate, but it is a per PG. I also found some things there that some updates are done by deleting the object and then creating a new object instead of doing rogues_db update. I'm not sure if this is really the case, but from looking at the code, it's
Lost you, Abby. Abby, I still don't hear you, unfortunately. So, my hope is that the work that you're doing on this is going to have a pretty big effect. I think there's a pretty good chance it will, based on what you've uncovered already and based on kind of what I generally knew about it, how it worked before. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for improving this. Gabby, if you oh no, you're gone now. Okay. I was going to ask him to maybe share this document that he sent out with the mailing list because it's really good. Gabby was basically oh good, you're back. Are you with us now? So what I guess Gabby covered in the document he sent out was basically the number of tombstones that we generate as a result of the the work that's being done in the SnapMapper, especially during trim, um, along with reads and writes. So it was really interesting to see that, especially in the context of RBD Mirror, where this causes a fairly significant amount of additional overhead compared to just a standard workload against
Mark,
yeah. Oh,
Mark,
good.
did
Yes.
we ever try to match tombstone creation or RocksDB activity with snap trimming? I mean, we could start snap trimming and then take a look of how much RocksDB was doing at the time.
No, I don't think anyone's done that. There's generally not been a whole lot of focus on the SnapMapper at all, and I think primarily because it was built, I think, with the belief that it wouldn't be used in this way. I don't know for sure. You'd have to ask Josh, or sorry, ask Sam, I guess. But I don't, the way that the RBD Mirror is using it, I don't think was maybe exactly envisioned when it was originally built. That's my impression anyway.
Yeah, as I said, there seems to be something wrong with the way we do delete because when we delete, if an object exists in multiple snap, which it's most time the case, because if we every 15 minutes we start a new snap and then we start doing synchronization, and once we're done we delete it, so there's going to be at least two snaps per object and possibly more if we are not fast enough. So when you delete an object, we send a delete request for the object with all the snap IDs that exist. So we had multiple delete requests, but only one of them is going to be accepted. The rest of them are just junk requests. And I'm not sure if this thing is going to be caught by the memory interface or it's going to go all the way to RocksDB. Because if it's going to RocksDB, it means we're going to issue a lot of uh, requests for non-existing data, which I think it's not RocksDB best suit because it
Yeah,
cannot find for sure that something does not exist. It have to go and search for this based on the Bloom
yeah,
filters.
exactly. You'd hit the bloom filters, and then you'd have to go through every single level.
Yeah, so I'm still not sure if this thing is. So I saw the I call it the cache mapper is going to see if you remove an object, cache mapper is going to see at least two requests for two snaps and maybe more, but only one of them going to exist. So if the cache mapper is going to trust himself and say, I don't see it in my repository, so it probably means this request is garbage, so I'm not going to forward it to RocksDB, then that's fine. But if the cache mapper is going to say, I don't have it, but maybe RocksDB have it, and still forward it to RocksDB, we're going to see some problems. And
Yeah,
is there a way to see in RocksDB how many requests for non-existing data he had?
I haven't looked for that. It's possible they may have something there, like lookup misses or something, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll look for it briefly while we talk here. Maybe the bloom filter statistics. That might be something to look at. I think you get statistics on bloom filter misses and hits.
Okay, so then it would be interesting to start seeing how many misses we had when we do snap delete.
Yeah. So yeah, I would you can get the bloom filters. I think those are accessible somehow. And there may be block cache hit and miss counters. So that might also be useful. All right. Well, Igor, the other thing I wanted to talk about, I wasn't sure if you'd be here or not, but welcome back from holiday.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
yes,
Well, probably I missed everything you said before this talk with Gabby.
nothing important. I don't think. We don't have very many PR updates. The one that Laura had mentioned though was one regarding uh, you had a newer pinning behavior PR that I think somehow I lost track of. But she had mentioned whether or not it would be good to talk about that. Was that Laura? Was that 44,349, or is that a different one?
Back really quickly. It was 4237.
Ah, an
Oh
older
no,
one.
that
Okay.
was okay. No, sorry, that was a related one. This is this it? Let's see.
Can you paste the link, please?
Yeah, I'm gonna send it. Here we go. $41.82.
Well, I believe that's pretty outdated stuff, and we finally use another approach or something.
Igor, I
It's
know you
more,
have. Oh, go ahead.
it's more than a year old.
There's one that's newer about making the pinning logic simpler. This one. Oh, that's Adams. Sorry. I thought that was yours, but that was Adams. It, I remember a while back we were trying to decide whether or not we should what we should do about this, but I don't remember if we ever came to any decisions.
I recall we had some. Had another PR matched. On. So, well, let me double check what we were doing with these PRs you pasted offline. I presume they are pretty outdated.
Yeah, maybe we just need to just close them out.
Yeah.
So
So
Igor,
for now, I believe we don't have any active issues or any hot issues with pinning logic.
yeah,
Pretty stable.
yeah, it hasn't been on my radar for quite a while. So I was I wasn't sure if there was anything still going on specifically with it, but that was kind of my impression too. Igor, one of the things I did want to mention to you is while you were on holiday, I as an offshoot of the work we were doing on your branch for testing Bluestore Wall, I started looking at the sharded up work queue and behavior of the OSD with different numbers of messenger threads and worker threads and shards. When we remove all of these other constraints, when we get rid of the red hat log, when we get rid of PG log, kind of thing. And one of the things I noticed is that it's extremely slow when we can't keep the shard queues full. If we let them drop off to be empty, and then we let the thread basically sleep, then later when we eventually call notify all, if we get into a pattern where we're allowing the queue to become empty over and over again and calling notify all over and over again, it's really inefficient and really slow. It mostly shows up. It's very, very obvious if you only have one messenger thread. It's less obvious if you have, three like our defaults. But it seems to be a real issue when it is happening. So it's not directly relevant to your Red Hat log work, but it's maybe kind of another facet of something in the classical OSD that we could potentially improve.
So you mean you have the same issue without my Red Hat log?
I don't know. I think so. I've noticed things in the past that made me think that the sharded up work queue was a problem. And this is the behavior that I noticed when I really looked into it when I used, actually it's not your Red Hat log, it's no Red Hat log.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, interestingly, this might be in line with, or maybe somehow intersect with my investigation, which I haven't completed yet, but it looks like when I use just a single client against my Red Hat log, and maybe in case of no Red Hat log as well, I could see a pretty significant performance drop comparing to the native Red Hat log implementation. And yeah, it looks like something that maybe thread worker thread implementation. So making OSD reply faster somehow negatively impacts, or maybe not faster but differently, somehow impacts this worker thread stuff in negative manner.
So the thing I was thinking of doing, and I wanted to ask your advice on it and see what you think, is try two experiments. One would be to replace notify all and instead wake up each thread in a loop individually without having a single context. And then the other thought was completely just ditch all of this and just have a polling mechanism like C star does, even though that's a lot of background work when it's idle. Just to see how it behaves if we do that.
Yeah, it's hard to advise right now, but yeah, maybe it may. Definitely it needs some investigation.
Yeah.
Pretty curious if this is played with. Because for me, it's still an open question what happened in my case. Well, I wouldn't be much surprised if it's the same root causes.
So that was the big thing that I figured out while you were gone, was that we had this kind of bad behavior when the messenger threads couldn't keep the shards, the queues in the shards, from being empty. That was kind of the big takeaway out of it. But haven't really gotten much else, anything new, interesting with your work or with that beyond that. So that was kind of it. Um, I did see you were starting to work on a whip4 branch, though. Anything interesting there?
No, it's still work in progress, which I just put separately before my vacation. So I tried to make RBD working against this transparent pool.
Oh, okay, cool. And Gabby and I were talking a little bit about the whole idea of trying to keep the PG log updates in the write ahead log, but out of RocksDB as much as possible. But I think we're probably still a ways away from even prototyping something like that. Do you agree, or do you think that's something we could?
Well, I started thinking about that, but realized that I need more understanding on PG log implementation itself. So, well, definitely it's possible to put these PG log updates at new write ahead log exclusively and do not pass them over to DB. This part is pretty clear to me. The question is about reading this PG log stuff, which I presume should happen on SD restart only, which looks doable as well. And still unclear part for me is what happens with these entries streaming, how it's formed, or should we do that somehow, or just rely on natural write ahead log cycling?
I mean, if there's like an old PG that's not being updated, right? We can't, or update, sorry, PG log update. So there's some PG that for some reason, you know, can't be. We can't get rid of it, right? We have to keep it around forever until eventually we can replace it. Um, so there is that scenario, right? Like it's
right. So it looks something like that. So it doesn't hurt if OSD is operating starts, as far as I understand, and might result in some additional work on startup. So we will process these outdated entries on OSD restart. How keep them. But again, I need more on
sure.
how PGLog itself operates.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I think that's basically it for stuff I've got. Was there anything else anyone else wanted to talk about this week? Not, then we'll wrap it up and give people a half an hour back of their day. All right.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you guys. Have a great day. Bye.
You too.